What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We'll continue with our 2024 schedule preview and projected record series. The Houston Cougars are up next, coming off of a disappointing 4-8 last season. You can see their schedule played UTSA, Rice, and Sam Houston in the non-conference. You know, preseason, if you thought they were going to lose a game in the non-conference, it was probably going to be to UTSA, not to Rice. But they didn't do very well in the Big 12 either, winning. They did beat West Virginia. It was a good team. They went on the road and beat Baylor, but they lost to Cincinnati, lost to UCF. It was a pretty tough schedule as far as Big 12 schedule. They played a lot of the tougher teams, although now that I look at it, they didn't play Oklahoma. Well, they did play Texas. So other than Oklahoma, they did play most of the top teams in the Big 12. Let's look at the schedule for 2024, and first we'll look at the non-conference. They play UNLV at Oklahoma and Rice. Obviously, at Oklahoma is going to be a really tough one, but UNLV, Rice, definitely winnable games there. And then you look at their home schedule in the Big 12, Iowa State, Utah, Kansas State, Baylor. They have to play Oklahoma on the road, plus 5 road games in the Big 12, only 4 home games. That means they only get 6 true home games, or 6 home games and 6 road games. Again, I think we saw this with just a team the other day. Usually, power conference teams will get at least the 7 games at home and not have to play 6 road games. But yeah, Iowa State, Utah, Kansas State, Baylor, that's the home schedule. All those games are going to be tough. Maybe they can get a couple of wins there. You look at the road schedule. Again, Oklahoma, then Cincinnati, TCU, Kansas, Arizona, and BYU. It's going to be tough, but I think they're capable of maybe going on the road and beating Cincinnati and BYU. Maybe find a way to get one of those other wins, TCU, Kansas, or Arizona. So there are wins available on this schedule as we get to the full schedule here. They start with UNLV again on August 31st, then at Oklahoma on the 7th, Rice on the 14th, at Cincinnati on the 21st, and then Iowa State on September 28th, and then they will get actually a Friday night game after that. They'll play TCU on a Friday night. Then they get their first bye week. So they have to play a while before they get that first bye week. Then they go on the road to play Kansas, then Utah at home, Kansas State also going to be at home, at Arizona on the 15th after another bye week. So their second bye week comes before that road game against Arizona. Then Baylor on the 23rd and BYU on the 30th. You look at the schedule. It's spaced out pretty well. You look at the tougher games, Oklahoma. Then you look at maybe Kansas and Utah. That's a tough stretch there, really, from Kansas to Arizona. Kansas, Utah, Kansas State, Arizona figure to be 4 of the top, maybe 6 or 7 teams in the Big 12. So that's going to be a tough stretch there. And then obviously Oklahoma in the non-conference. But it's not a horrible schedule. Could be worse. But again, that's going to be a really tough stretch. All right, so let's get to the projections. First, let's look at last year's projections. Again, this team went just 4-8. Our projection had them at 7-5. I picked them to go 6-6. Athlon picked them to go 6-6. But look at Vegas. Vegas was actually on the money with this team, or not on the money, but they were closer than everyone else. They had the over/under at 4.5 or 5. And I think most people would say that's easy money. There's no way they're going below 4.5. Just look at the other projections here. And so Vegas probably made a lot of money on picks for Houston, because 4-8 was under even that 4.5. All right, so let's get to the projections for this year. Here's a scale that we use. Again, we've talked about this in other videos. We'll start with easy wins. UNLV and Rice, I'm going to put these games in the blue, not the green. Again, they lost to Rice last year, but you expect Houston to win these games. They should be pretty big favorites in both of them, but not guaranteed wins. Not guaranteed wins. These are decent group of 5 teams. And then you look at games where they're going to be underdogs by about a touchdown. Kansas, Utah, Arizona on the road. And so those games will be tough. Utah and Kansas State are in the same tier for me, but Houston's kind of in the lower portion of their tier, and Utah is in the top portion of theirs. Kansas State a little bit lower. That was probably really confusing, but there was a little bit of a difference in that. So we went with the yellow for Utah and called Kansas State a 50-50 game. I'm a little bit higher on Utah than Kansas State, even though I think both of those teams should be pretty good. Then Kansas and Arizona, because they're on the road, that's why I think Houston will be a clear underdog. I'll tell you what, though, looking at this Houston team and this roster and the new coaching staff, I think they could surprise some people this year. I think they are going to be better than they were last year for sure. How much better, we'll see. But then you look at Oklahoma. I think that's a team where they're going to be a pretty big underdog. And, I have to stick with the other projections that I've done. Since I did my Oklahoma projections weeks and weeks ago, I'm not as high on Oklahoma, and I might actually be a little bit higher on Utah. So those could potentially both be in the orange, or maybe even both be in the yellow. The difference, though, Oklahoma is on the road. So Oklahoma on the road, that's why we have that one in the orange. I think Houston will be a double-digit underdog in that one. And then you've got a bunch of 50-50 games. Cincinnati, Iowa State, TCU, Kansas State, Baylor, BYU. These are all games that really could go either way. And so what do you get when you average it all out? Well, you get 6-6. So a bowl game for Houston if they beat UNLV and Rice. And let's just say they lose to Oklahoma, Kansas, Utah, and Arizona. So they would have to win in these other, 6 games. They have to actually go 4-2 in those games. But the odds would say they're probably going to split those games and then pull off a win against Kansas, Utah, or Arizona. But either way, again, the numbers add up to 6-6. So that's the projection for Houston. Do you guys agree? Do you disagree? Give me your thoughts on this Houston team down in the comments below.